views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
To be clear, this doesn't stop with Donald Trump.
Tonight on Politics Now, President Trump impeached again. The votes from Nevada's delegation and where things go in the Senate. A Nevada assemblyman caught up in a campaign finance scandal. What we know about the police investigation into Alex Acefa.
But I believe that we should really focus on a plan. Let's get some sort of plan in place, and then continue working on distance learning.
And is it back to school or back to the computer? The CCSD school board vote on trying to put children back in the classroom.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm John Langler. Donald Trump has been impeached for a second time. Now it's up to the Senate to determine if the president actually gets convicted. The House of Representatives voted 232 to 197 to impeach President Trump for inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. 10 Republicans joined the Democrats. Most of the GOP, though, argued for unity in the president's defense, even if some admitted that he bears some responsibility.
A vote to impeach will further fan the flames of partisan division.
The terrorists who stormed this building plan to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple our government.
Democrats argued even with less than a week left in President Trump's term, a Senate conviction would likely bar him from ever running for president again. So here's how Nevada's congressional delegation voted on impeachment. Democrats Dina Titus, Susie Lee, and Stephen Horsford supported the impeachment in the House. Nevada's lone Republican, Congressman Mark Amodei, voted against it. Congressman Horsford says he wants to go even further.
To be clear, this doesn't stop with Donald Trump. There are 121 members of Congress who also participated. Some of them, as more information is becoming more available, that may actually have facilitated the insurrection. So they need to be held accountable. They need to be expelled and removed from office. We have heads of agencies that need to be held accountable. Any individual, from the president to an agency to a member of Congress who is involved in inciting insurrection against the United States, must be held accountable.
President Donald Trump, the only president in American history to be impeached twice. And to talk about that and where we go from here, we're joined by our Washington correspondent, Alexander Limon. Alex, let's get right into things. What are the chances the Senate takes up the impeachment trial before the president leaves office?
Well, that's not going to happen. Senator Mitch McConnell already announced that he will not be calling the Senate back from recess to begin an impeachment trial immediately. So that means that likely it will happen after Joe Biden is inaugurated. So the purpose of that would be to try to prevent President Trump from running for office again in the future if he is convicted. Now, the timing and logistics of all of it is going to be pretty tricky because obviously the new president, Joe Biden, is going to try to be getting his agenda off the ground, trying to get cabinet members confirmed through the Senate, maybe even trying to pass a COVID relief bill. So we've actually heard from Joe Biden on this topic, and he said he's had conversations with the top senators to try to figure out if they can essentially divide their days in half and deal with his legislative agenda for half the day and then deal with the Senate impeachment trial of President Trump for the other half of the day. So that's a lot to take on. So we likely have, some pretty busy days and weeks ahead of us here on Capitol Hill.
It seems as though there might still be up in the air if there's going to be an appetite to continue with this process when President Biden takes office next week. As you mentioned, there's a lot on his agenda as well. Any gauging on whether the appetite will sustain itself into the next administration?
Yeah, there is some mixed reaction. Obviously, Republicans are among those who are saying this is unnecessary. He will no longer be in the White House. Some Democrats as well wonder if it is the wisest path to move forward. But on the other hand, we're also hearing from top Democrats who say there needs to be some sort of consequence because obviously now President Trump has been impeached for inciting a riot in which members of the public we now know were trying to assassinate some of the top members of Congress. So they say they can't just let that slide, and they do feel that a Senate impeachment trial to try to convict the president does still need to happen.
And that was Alexander Limon from Washington, D.C. As we mentioned, Mark Amodei, Nevada's only no vote against the article of impeachment. In a statement, the Republican said the article of impeachment is not strongly drafted, due primarily to an objective, which is, he says, the ends justify the means. The fledgling investigation, he says, is already verifying that those who led the perpetrators were hardly driven to action within an hour of the riot beginning. I vote no. Congresswoman Dina Titus says she was worried that violence in the Capitol could spread all the way here to Nevada.
I do worry about it because people are encouraged to take action in their own hands, and we are a government of laws, and that's what we should follow. When we saw people storming the Capitol, who would have ever imagined that to be the case? And we have a constitutional duty, I swore it when I was elected, to protect the Constitution and the government, and that's not what happened last Wednesday. And one of the reasons Trump needs to go, that he's still a danger, is that he could pardon all these people, and he controls the nuclear button.
We'll have more on the inauguration and the security steps being taken in Washington later in the program. Now to the state legislature. Metro Police are recommending charges against a now former Nevada assemblyman over a campaign finance issue and for not living in his district. This week, Assemblyman Alex Acefa resigned while facing those charges. The Democrat represented District 42, that's essentially Spring Valley. He's also thought to be the first Ethiopian American elected to public office here in the U.S. This week, Metro Police told the I-Team they recommended the district attorney charge Acefa with 24 counts. They're related to his not living in his district, misusing campaign funds, burglary, and theft. Prosecutors, though, have not filed the charges just yet. A second seat in the legislature also needs to be filled, but for a very different reason. State Senator Ivana Kinsella is resigning to join the Biden administration. Kinsella is joining the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The Democrat was a senior advisor to the Biden campaign during the election. Before joining the state Senate, she was the political director for the Culinary Union. Kinsella represented District 10, that includes McCarran Airport and portions of the Las Vegas Strip. Both replacements will be picked by the Clark County Commission. The candidates will have to apply. They have to live in the district, obviously, and be Democrats. The legislative session starts February 1st. Clark County school students are going to stay largely in distance learning. However, this week CCSD trustees took small steps towards reopening schools. Superintendent Dr. Jesus Jara and the trustees will allow the return of small groups on a voluntary basis. Sasha Loftus explains what happened in this week's board meeting.
The Clark County School District is taking small steps towards reopening schools.
I am worried about their education. I feel like they're getting cheated.
It's a decision many parents call long overdue after months of distance learning struggles and trustees' previous moves to delay any action.
The younger kids it's really hard not having that teacher or that assistant there just to keep them on track. 2
votes were passed during Thursday's regular board meeting. The first approved an agreement with the Clark County Education Association to lay groundwork for an eventual K through 3rd grade hybrid transition.
I believe that we should really focus on a plan. Let's get some sort of plan in place, and then continue working on distance learning.
The second, which was unanimous, will allow principals to bring students who need extra support back to campus in small groups on a limited basis.
Because there's no such thing as a comprehensive plan, and I think that we all know that, being adults. That said, I think we need hope.
There's still no word on a timeline, but families tell us they want to see concrete change so their kids can succeed.
I think that you're doing them a huge injustice by the not being to get an education at school.
And that was Sasha Loftus reporting. Trustees also heard a report saying 90% of CCSD schools assigned more failing grades this year than last year, 2019 to 2020. It's a key reason that principals are being allowed to bring struggling students back to campus for help. Coming up next here on Politics Now, are elected officials jumping the line? The I-Team's Vanessa Murphy looks into who is and who is not getting the COVID vaccine in Nevada. Plus, planning a safe inauguration.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
It is a lingering question as Nevada and the nation fight the coronavirus. When can people get the vaccine? Well, this week, plans changed. The new plan, outlined by Governor Steve Sisolak, divides Nevadans into two lanes: frontline workers and the general public. When you get the vaccine depends on which one of those two groups you're in. Frontline workers are getting the vaccine now. They'll be able to go into two large vaccination centers that are opening this week, and they're all by appointment. People 70 years of age and older can also sign up for an appointment to get a vaccine at that location. If you're in the general population right now in that lane and you're under the age of 70, you're going to get a vaccine from your pharmacy. Health officials say once a vial is open, they really have to use it. And some businesses with a lot of frontline workers are able to vaccinate all their employees.
I think one really important concept to understand is that the storage and handling of the vaccine is incredibly difficult and challenging. And after a vial is punctured, there's a very short window to essentially use those doses within the vial before they expire, essentially.
For now, people can fill out a vaccine interest form. That'll notify them when they can get that vaccine. We have a link to the form and where you can sign up for an appointment if you're a frontline worker or you're over the age of 70. Everything you need is at 8newsnow.com. Elected officials in some cities are also getting the vaccine, even if the CDC has them at a lower priority. The I-Team's Vanessa Murphy has that story.
Some viewers contacted us to say something doesn't seem quite right about how the city of Henderson is handling the vaccine. The concern is whether elected officials jumped the line.
Coronavirus vaccines that are being distributed throughout the United States right now, including right here in Henderson.
Some City of Henderson employees, including elected officials, could get vaccinated as early as January 4th, alongside frontline workers like firefighters and police. A spokeswoman tells the I-Team elected officials are critical to city operations. But according to the Southern Nevada Health District, public officials were in Tier 2, behind frontline workers, not alongside them. In the state's new vaccination plan released Monday, the health district says public officials still fall in the second group. There's confusion, to say the least. According to the CDC, the state is far behind in vaccinating Nevadans. The I-Team asked the governor about this.
Why is this, since we have known that we would need a vaccination plan, and why has it taken so long to come up with this newer playbook?
Well, it hasn't taken so long, Vanessa, really to come up with it. You know, we've been planning this for a long time. We did not have the resources.
The I-Team also reached out to other cities in Southern Nevada and Clark County to find out where public officials fall in their vaccination plans. Here's what they told us. In Clark County, UMC directly received vaccine doses for healthcare workers and first responders. The county is not administering the vaccine. Employees and elected officials are expected to follow guidelines. The city of Las Vegas points to the health district as the lead, and the vaccine is being rolled out to first responders like hospital staff, fire, and law enforcement. In North Las Vegas, firefighters, EMTs, police officers, and corrections staff were vaccinated first. Critical infrastructure employees like elected officials can get vaccinated starting Wednesday. Boulder City confirms no council members have received the vaccine through the city at this point. Mayor Kiernan McManus saying, quote, "I plan to follow the recommendations for vaccination based on my age without regard to my position as mayor. That would place me in Tier 4, end quote. A different approach from the city of Henderson.
Deeply, we appreciate the incredible strength and spirit that you've shown during this unparalleled year.
In a follow-up email, a spokeswoman for the city of Henderson insists the mayor and city council fall within Tier 1 because they make crucial decisions for the city. You can read more of her response at 8newsnow.com. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
In another follow-up email, the City of Henderson spokesperson insisted that the mayor and council fall within Tier 1, as Vanessa just mentioned. And she also mentioned that the city has returned vials it hasn't used to the health district. And again, you can find more details at 8newsnow.com. A man both loved and hated. Coming up on Politics Now, we're going to take a look at the life of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson after he passed away earlier this week. And protecting the next president, the extra security measures being taken to keep Inauguration Day safe.
You're watching Politics Now.
The inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden is next week. Officials in Washington are stepping up security after the Capitol Hill riot January 6th. The FBI is warning police departments nationwide need to be ready for armed protests at their Capitol buildings on Wednesday. In Nevada, law enforcement agencies are not identifying what specific precautions will be taken here. Meanwhile, Metro Police are investigating if any officers took part in last week's Capitol Hill riot. Sheriff Joe Lombardo says if they did, they could lose their job.
We're working hand in hand with the FBI, and we're going through all the videos and relying on people to call in if they know, and we'll do an intensive follow-up if, in fact, we do identify somebody.
Right now, Metro Police tells us they have no evidence that any of its officers were inside the Capitol. Henderson and North Las Vegas police departments both say they were not aware of any officers that also took part in those Capitol Hill riots. So, what precautions are being taken in Washington, D.C.? Our D.C. Bureau's Raquel Martin tells us the unprecedented security measures ahead of the inauguration.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Less than a week before Joe Biden is sworn in as the next president, the nation's capital has transformed from a tourist attraction to a military zone.
I'm very appreciative.
Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who will attend next week's ceremony, says he welcomes extra security following last week's deadly insurrection.
I have concerns that a number of these mobsters, these violent far right-wing white supremacists, will come back with guns.
Local and federal law enforcement, including the Secret Service, have already shut down nearby streets, and the Pentagon's deployed thousands of National Guardsmen. By Inauguration Day, 20,000 troops will occupy the area, many armed. Thursday, Vice President Pence visited FEMA headquarters to be briefed on Inauguration Day security.
The American people deserve a safe inauguration.
And Wednesday night, President Trump delivered his most forceful statement to date against violence.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for.
I'm not afraid of taking the oath outside.
President-elect Biden says his team is also receiving security briefings.
We need to go back and review everything.
In the meantime, Republicans and Democrats are demanding an investigation to prevent future domestic attacks. It's unclear exactly when military troops will leave the nation's capital, but by Inauguration Day, there will be more military troops in Washington, D.C. than currently in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. For now, in Washington, Raquel Martin, back to you.
And we'll, of course, cover Inauguration Day right here on Channel 8. Our coverage begins at 5 o'clock on Inauguration Day morning and will last throughout the day. A man both loved and hated. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the life of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. Casino czar Sheldon Adelson passed away this week. He arrived in Las Vegas back in the 1980s, running what was at the time our largest convention. Adelson became one of the world's richest men, a major player in Las Vegas, a philanthropist, and a huge Republican donor. Joe Moeller looks back at Adelson's legacy.
Just do things in life.
Billionaire Las Vegas casino mogul Sheldon Adelson passed away Monday. While born in Boston in 1933, a good portion of his life was Las Vegas. In the late 80s, he purchased the Sands Hotel and Casino, which eventually was replaced by the Venetian. Then he built the Palazzo. Las Vegas Sands also expanded with several resorts in Asia.
Our city and our state is in such a better place because of Sheldon Adelson.
Steve Hill, CEO of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, recognized Adelson's impact.
He had a tremendous influence on what we do on the meetings and convention industry.
Adelson also helped bring the state's first NFL team to Las Vegas.
It's important to point out that Mr. Adelson was really the driving force behind Allegiant Stadium.
The billionaire was a veteran and a major financial contributor to the Republican Party and President Trump. Adelson and his wife Miriam were well-known philanthropists, donating millions to anti-drug and Jewish organizations.
There are many things that Mr. Adelson and Dr. Adelson have been involved in their philanthropy journey, in medical breakthrough, in the connection between the Jewish people, all around the continuity of the Jewish people all around the world.
Joe Moeller, 8 News Now.
Adelson was buried at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem Friday morning. We have a lot more on Sheldon Adelson and his life here in Las Vegas on 8newsnow.com. Ron Futrell looks at his role in bringing the Las Vegas Raiders here and building Allegiant Stadium. And George Knapp uses his own interviews with Sheldon Adelson to examine his legacy. Now, Adelson was also an extremely influential player in the Republican political world. Among the things he pushed for and accomplished, Adelson became the largest known individual donor in electoral history in 2012. He spent $90 million on Republicans in that presidential race. The money mostly went through super PACs, essentially. Adelson was the main backer of the Republican Jewish Coalition. The group helped expand the Jewish Republican voting base during that time. They also had their yearly meeting at the Venetian. He was also extremely influential in getting the U.S. Embassy in Israel moved to Jerusalem. And, of course, he was the owner of the local newspaper, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the first major paper to endorse then-candidate Donald Trump for President of the United States. Here's what to watch this week. Governor Steve Sisolak will air his State of the State address 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 19th. The Republican rebuttal will be done by Assembly Republican leader Dr. Robin Titus. We're going to carry both live right here on Channel 8. The inauguration of President Joe Biden is on Tuesday. We're going to watch that as well. Or Wednesday, I beg your pardon. It's also on Capitol Hill in Carson City. We're going to keep an eye on the security there. Law enforcement says they do expect armed protests nationwide on Inauguration Day. Thank you very much for watching us here on Politics Now. You can stay up to date on all the political news online at 8newsnow.com. We're back with you every Saturday. Stay safe and have a good rest of your weekend.